right, welcome back. We're with Superintendent Philip Martin. We're talking about education tax. And what I want to do before we get into the physical plants and what's going to change with it, Miss Judy Smart, who's done a lot of research, actually forwarded us 2 questions that she would like to ask, so we don't want to leave anybody out. And if you have a question by phone, we'll take it 879-1231. Are they dead set on having the millage on the ballot? Or would they consider only an 11 mill for the new school buildings, or leave the rest of the mill for the teachers on a future ballot? Want to take that one first?
Sure. It's a very good question. Obviously, we have the discretion to ask for any amount. We ask for 40 because that is the state average. That's how we arrived upon it, is that we're asking for average local support, average in the state of Louisiana. You can divide it those ways. There's nothing prohibiting that. That's not the way we're pursuing it, however. You know, we are asking for 11 for capital improvement and 20 mills for instructional programs and salary and benefits. I'd like to touch upon something you mentioned about the capital improvements. That's building brick and mortar issues. The average age of a school in Terrebonne Parish is 60 years old. That's the average.
That's incredible when you think about it.
Yeah, well, it's, as you begin looking around some of the schools, you mentioned some of our newer ones are 40. So, you know,
Yeah.
and we have several schools that are 100 years old.
And I know we laughed about it before, but there've actually been people, and not to say that the teachers don't do a great job, but when you look at some of these schools, they're just point blank ugly. Some of these schools are built, you know, for the architecture way back when.
I was speaking to the faculty at Broadmoor, and by the way, at Broadmoor, miracles are happening in that building every day on a daily basis. They have done some phenomenal things for several years in a row in regards to student achievement. The faculty there, and we have other faculties that are talented, but specifically this issue at Broadmoor, I was speaking to them and complimenting on their top gain school, have been for several years in a row. And I told them, speaking to them on this issue, I said, you know, miracles happen in this building every day. Broadmoor's an ugly school. I'm sorry, physically. What's happening inside that school is beautiful and miraculous, but to look at it, it does not leave you with an impression, I like my kids going there.
So you need a miracle on the outside.
Well, I don't know if we need a miracle, but we need to do something with all our schools when the average age is 60 years old. They should be warm, inviting places, and I would like, when we have visitors to our community, as we visit other communities and drive through and look at a school that's a really nice school and say, wow, look at that school, how nice.
But that's what big business people, I've interviewed many big business people that come through Terrebonne or Lafourche or St. Mary or Assumption, wherever you want to talk about. First thing they do, me and my wife went around to look at your school system. I hear that more than any other comment they make, because when they're relocating, they want to know where their kids are going to school. So if they're passing Terrebonne High School on Main Street and they see a historical building, but it looks old, that sets an impression, doesn't it?
There's no question that the physical appearance of a building makes a perception. It generates a perception. It can be a good perception or it can be a negative one, just by the way a building looks. Our schools are average 60 years old. They're very well maintained and very clean. And if we do nothing, next year the average age will be 61 years old. At some point in time, the physical infrastructure of our schools has to be addressed.
Let me ask you this. Let's talk about some specific ideas that you have. I know maybe we could start in the Bayou Black area. You had 3 schools up there. What would you do with that area? And we can move along the process, because I thought that was quite interesting. How are you going to make that happen?
As an example, there's been a lot of discussion recently, particularly as we've struggled with finances, of consolidating schools. I want to make sure I say it right, because we've been saying it backwards. I will not take a school out of a community. I will leave no community with no school. I think that's vital to a community to maintain the identity both for the school and the community, to maintain a community presence, a school presence in every community. But take Bayou Black, for example. There are 3 schools on Bayou Black. There's Bayou Black, Greenwood, and Gibson. 3 very small schools. 2 of them, one's 100, one's almost 100. Why not build one brand new Bayou Black Elementary and consolidate all 3? In time, it's the financially smart thing to do anyway, and you have kids attending a brand new, state-of-the-art school that any parent would be envious of and be happy to send their child to. But that's an example of the things we would like to be able to do.
And the 2 other buildings that would now be extra, you would use them for other things that could be used in the community.
We would love to see, and we've already had interest expressed when people began to hear that these are things being contemplated that might happen, to utilize them for some community activities and cultural centers as part of that community, which I think is a wonderful idea. So there's a lot of, for those historically significant buildings, although they may not be the best thing to house children in any longer, anything gets to be 100 years old, it has its innate problems, but it may have some very beneficial interest to a community who want to host and house community-type events in them. So we would work with those communities in that regard.
A lot of schools, you have property where you can expand. Mulberry would definitely be one that has a lot of property. Some schools like West Park Elementary, you're landlocked. But you had a good idea about West Park. I think you were going to bring that to Legion, but tell me that scenario that would happen.
Well, these are all scenarios, by the way. The school board has not approved the final plan yet. That is still before the board, but I'm optimistic, and I think...
But you'd have to have an idea for people to vote on.
Yeah, these are ideas. These are conceptual ideas of consolidation. West Park, Legion Park. The kids from West Park go to Legion Park ultimately anyway. West Park is landlocked. It's not really have really nice playgrounds because there's no place to put a playground. And Legion Park, as you mentioned, has a lot of room, a lot of space. The building is a nice building. It can be updated and remodeled, and additions can be made to it to put West Park and Legion Park one school as another example of a consolidation. Yeah. It's still the same community, still the same kids are going to the same school, but instead of 2 schools you're operating one. And in the long run, the finances, it's a financially smart thing to do because you're cutting your operating costs basically in half from the physical sense when you do those consolidations.
And then you'd use West Park. I think you were telling me, does West Park, I think you told me, tie in with something you would do with Home Elementary?
Well, we currently, our special education department and federal department is housed in the old Home Elementary, right, which is a very old building and needs in need of a lot of repair. Yeah. A possibility, then we could move out of that old building on Home Elementary, what's in the middle of Houma, and house those people at West Park. Yeah. Those are all possibilities as that can be done with this capital expenditure. And I do want to add, it will be building schools. In Mulberry's case, Mulberry would probably be the highest priority. It's 900, almost 1,000 kids in a school built for 450. Something's got to be done there.
And you were bringing some up, and I know Eugene and Lorraine Folse are listening because they live on the route to Mulberry School, and it's just a big traffic jam. But you were saying something that could be done to maybe alleviate.
If we can alleviate the portables, we can make a new bus driveway on the side of the school with some portables on now and get the buses off the street, out the road, so we don't have that. It is congestion there. Yeah. It creates its own unique set of problems.
Well, it's good that y'all thinking about all the scenarios.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But that would provide some solution to that traffic, as well as providing a permanent school building for 500 kids who are currently housed in portables, and they again pose their own unique set of problems. But the building scenario, I do want to be sure that everybody understands it's not going to be just building new schools. Every school will be touched in some shape, form, or fashion.
Well, a prime example is Southdown, which is, I mean, let's face it, let's just be blunt. That is very synonymous with some of the early, I mean, like Frank Lewis went to Southdown. It's a landmark school where a lot of some of the great people that came out of Terrebonne Parish went to Southdown School. You told me that that's going to be completely redone, but you're going to keep the stadium and the gym.
That's correct.
Okay.
Southdown needs a new Southdown. The
Yeah.
historical significance of Southdown can never be forgotten, can never be lost. We will retain that.
Yeah.
The historical significance of Southdown is not in the building, it's in the name and the people who attended there. We're going to retain that.
And it's on a thoroughfare. So
Well,
people
it's-
that are coming
it's-
through town see that.
It is one of the most visible buildings probably in Terrebonne Parish. It's on one of the busiest thoroughfares in Terrebonne Parish. The school needs extensive renovations. In my mind, it doesn't make sense to spend millions on it. When you finish, you still got an old building.
Right.
There needs, in my mind, I would love to see, and part of the proposal to be considered is build a new Southdown, a brand new one.
And you said it would take, what, about, did you say 15 million?
We're estimating between 15 million to 20 million, and you know that's because we've just recently done some projects, and that gives us a ballpark.
Right. So you got an idea of what it would
Yes.
take. What we'll do, let's take a break. We'll come back, take a few phone call or questions if we can, and we'll continue. We're trying to educate you as much as we can on what this millage is about, and instead of you making a blanket decision, whether you're going to vote for or against it, Superintendent is here to answer some questions. When we come back, we'll go to the phone lines. Don't go away.